All right. Hello, everyone. We're going to wait for this live video to go ahead and get started for us before we get going. So I want to introduce myself for those that may not have had the chance to tune in last week. My name is Morgan. This is my second week working with Get Your Play On, so I just wanted to welcome you all to my segment. Every Thursday, I'm going to be doing these live videos and doing some really fun science experiments. We're going to learn about all sorts of different things as we go through our 8 weeks of camp. And I really want to talk about how to be a scientist and how to do experiments that are really fun that you can share with your friends and family, as well as just providing some step-by-step instructions for you to be able to do those experiments by yourself. So I wanted to welcome you all if you're just tuning in. You are seeing me from my backyard here in California where the weather is nice. Let's see, it's about 74 outside, which is awesome for summertime. And so if you're new to Get Your Play On, we are doing some really fun themed weeks, and this week is patriotic and around the world. So we're going to be doing a fun science experiment and craft today that's going to work with those cool themes. So I thought to start off my live, I was going to share a joke, because I don't know about you, but I love jokes. And I decided, since this was a patriotic and around the world themed segment, that I was going to find a joke about the 4th of July. So let's see. Why do ducks like the 4th of July? Does anyone have any ideas? Because they like firecrackers. Oh my gosh, I think that one's a really funny joke. You can save that and use it on your friends and family for the 4th of July that's coming up here in just a couple days. So, you may have noticed that we're going to be doing something called marbled milk drawing. It's a marble milk experiment, all sorts of stuff. And that may seem really weird. How are you going to make art with milk? I thought it seemed a little silly too until I learned about how cool it was and how we're going to walk through it today. So not only are we going to do an experiment, but we're going to do a craft as well. And I brought an example of our craft. So I wrote it here. This is Get Your Play Online. So that's what you're visiting here right now. And this is the kind of craft we're going to make with milk. I know, it seems silly, but if you hang in there with me, I'm going to walk you through and you're going to be able to learn all about it. So I brought some other examples. So remember I said it was week 1 of our themed weeks, which is patriotic and around the world. So we did a red, white, and blue example, and we're going to walk through how to do that today. So if you tuned into my live last week, you know that I like to bring a nice whiteboard that talks about our supplies so that if you're watching at home, you're able to go and get those before you start. If you're watching them live, we'll give you a little bit of time to be able to collect those. And if you're watching it recorded, you can always pause and take a look at that supply list. So we have our supply list. So you're going to need a dish. You can do this with any kind of dish you want. It could be a paper plate. It could be a glass bowl. If you're going to be doing it with multiple people, I would recommend doing it with a cookie sheet, because that way lots of people can play at once and you guys can all work together to create a really cool art piece. So you're also going to need cow milk or almond milk. So these are the milks that are going to work well with our experiment. So you want to use any kind of cow milk. I tested this experiment yesterday so I could learn how it worked a little bit better, and I used fat-free milk and it worked perfectly. So that's what we're going to go ahead and use today. You can also use almond milk because it has a similar property to cow's milk. Other milk substitutes like maybe cashew milk or rice milk haven't been tested, but that could be an awesome way for you to learn more about this experiment and try it out for yourself. You're also going to need dish soap. So that's a really important aspect of this project. If you use different kinds of soap, it may not work as well, but we're actually going to go ahead and test that today to see if that's a true or false hypothesis. We're going to touch on hypotheses in just a second, and I'm going to share some of mine, as well as encouraging you to create your own hypothesis at home as to what you think is going to happen. You're also going to need watercolor paper. So watercolor paper is just a different kind of paper. It's a little bit more porous, which means there's more air inside of the paper, which allows colors to seep into it more than a different kind of paper. For example, maybe printer paper or construction paper. Color won't stick to it as well because it's not designed to be used with a wet medium. So a wet medium is like watercolor, or in this case, we're actually going to use food coloring. I know it seems a little silly that we're going to make art with food supplies, but promise, if you stick around, I'm going to show you exactly how to do it. So like I said, we're also going to need food coloring. I actually tested it yesterday with regular food coloring and gel, and they both seem to work really well. We're going to touch on that in just a second, and I'm going to show you all of the supplies I gathered. So Our first supply is a dish. I actually brought a couple different ones. This is just a regular old baking dish. It's nice and shallow. You're actually not going to need a lot of milk for this experiment, which is great because we want to make sure we're not wasting any food, because it's really important not to drink or use the milk that we use for this experiment for anything but the experiment and the craft, because we are going to put dish soap and some food coloring and maybe even our fingers inside, so it's not going to be safe to drink. So make sure when you're all done, you dispose of it maybe down the sink, or if you're outside, maybe pouring it somewhere in a safe place. You could ask mom or dad or someone, another grown-up that may be at home with you if you have any questions as to where you could pour that milk, but it could make you sick if you drank it, so we just want to make sure we don't do that. So this is the perfect dish. It's going to let us have a really great experiment without wasting any milk. Since we are going to try a couple different things, I also grabbed a regular old paper plate. These are actually some leftovers we had from a Christmas party we had, so it's a perfect way to use them. So I grabbed 2 of them because I think we're going to try a couple different things. So like I said, we're going to use some milk. I put it in this nice, easy to pour container, but you could pour it right out of the container that the milk came in as well. This is just going to make it a little easier while I do it on camera. And like I said, this is fat-free milk. You could go ahead and try it with different kinds of milk, maybe 2% or whole milk, and see if that can make any differences in the outcome of the project. We're also going to use dish soap. I put it in this little container, but this is regular old dish soap that you would use to wash your dishes and make sure they stayed all clean. And this is a really important part of our experiment because this is actually going to be the magic that makes the art. All right, so we're going to come back to that in just a second. I also thought it would be interesting to test hand soap. I know a lot of us are using a lot more of this than we may have used to use with the sickness that's going around. So it's really important that when you're washing your hands, you want to use a soap with disinfectant in it, which is a difference between dish soap, because dish soap actually doesn't have that antibacterial property to it. But I think we're going to test this to see if it's going to work the same way as our dish soap. So we're going to come back to that later as well. We're going to use some Q-tips. You may have these just regular for your bathroom. You may use it to clean. You can also use other things. I just found that a Q-tip holds a lot of soap on the tip of it, so it's going to be a really great vessel for us to put inside of our art. And then watercolor paper. I just have a pad of it. I'll go ahead and show you. I did a little drawing here. See, it's like an outdoor scene, and you can use watercolors on it because it has a little bit more of a porous texture. I don't know if you'll be able to see. You can see a little bit how it's a little different. So we're going to come back to that after we do our science experiment. And then lastly, we need food coloring. Like I said, there's 2 kinds of food coloring. There's the more watery. It's a more traditional kind of food coloring, and there's also a gel. The gel is thicker, and it is also a lot more vibrant, so you need a lot less of this, and you'll need a little bit more of this. All right, so I think I covered all of our supplies, and if you're watching at home, you had some time to maybe grab some of those as well. So last week we really touched on what a hypothesis is. So I like to think of a hypothesis as an educated guess. So when you're talking about an experiment, you can say, I wonder what will happen. I think this will happen. So if you're using that kind of thought process, that's actually making a hypothesis, which is really cool. And you want to make sure you're doing that when you're doing experiments, because it's going to help you learn, and it's going to help you be creative and doing all sorts of stuff while you do science. So I like to make my hypotheses before I start my live so that I can share them with you. And then as the video goes on, we can test those to see if my hypotheses were right or my hypotheses were wrong. Something really important to note, as a scientist, it's okay to be wrong. I was wrong all the time. Last week I had a couple hypotheses and they didn't go well at all. I ended up getting water all over me. It got all over my table and all over my pants because I thought the water balloon wasn't going to pop, and it definitely did. But that's okay. Being wrong is part of being a scientist, and it will make you better, and it can allow you to make some changes to see if it'll work better next time. So, my hypothesis for this video is that when we mix food coloring into the milk, that's going to just mix in there easily. So what we're going to do is we're going to put our milk into a shallow dish, and then we're going to put some food coloring inside of it, and then use our soap to see if that color is going to stay where it is in the milk, or if it's going to spread out and make kind of a tie-dye milk effect, which is really cool. So that's going to be the purpose of our experiment today. So I think when we put the food dye in it, it's just going to mix right away, and it's not going to stay in one place. So that's my first hypothesis that we're definitely going to check. My second hypothesis is that after we're done, we're going to actually take some of that watercolor paper and dip it into the milk and take it out to see if it's going to dye our paper. I'm not sure if it's going to work because paper isn't food and this is food coloring, so I'm not sure if the paper is going to actually get dyed. We're going to have to test and see if I'm right. And then my third hypothesis is that if we're going to put soap in milk, that the milk is just going to get really soapy. Maybe it's going to look like bubble solution at the end. I don't know. You can always put your hypotheses in the comments to let us know what you're thinking about the experiment before we start. All right, so let's see. We've introduced our activity, we've gone over our supplies and taken a look to make sure we have everything we need, and we've also went over our hypotheses. I think we're ready to start our experiment. What do you guys think? All right, I'm gonna go ahead and put some of our supplies off to the side and get my camera ready. I wanna make sure I tilt the camera a little bit forward and then prop up what I'm doing so that everyone can see, so it'll just take me just a second. I'm gonna use this container here so you'll see a nice pink top and put that down here as my workstation. And then I'm gonna try to prop up my computer just like this so that you'll be able to see what I'm doing as the video goes. All right, let's see. This is also part of my experiment, is seeing how I can make sure everything stays safe while the video is going and allows everyone to see. Okay, let's see. That might be good, and I'll just move this back for us. All right, friends, so you're gonna see me up here. I know I'm gonna be hiding, but you can still hear my voice. So what we're gonna do is I think we're gonna start the experiment with this pan. This is the one I tested out yesterday, so I know it's gonna work. So we're gonna go ahead and place that right here for us. And then it's important to know that you don't actually need a lot of milk. When I did it yesterday, I just made sure I just covered the bottom. You don't need a lot. So I'm going to use this nice measuring cup, and I'm going to carefully pour this inside of my pan. All right. Let's see. That's perfect. I'm going to put just a little bit more. All right. I think that's perfect. So you can see that we just have milk all the way down across our dish, but we don't have a whole bunch. We don't need a whole bunch. And since it is Patriotic and Around the World Week, and we're coming up on the 4th of July, which is when we celebrate Independence Day here in America, we might use some blue dye and some red dye. And the white's going to act as the milk's going to act as our white. So we're going to have red, white, and blue, which are the colors of the American flag. So I think I'm going to do red. What you're going to do is you're going to carefully uncap your food dye so the top is off, and you're going to put small drops of it throughout your milk. So I'm going to put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That looks good to me. I think this is a good point to stop and see if my first hypothesis was right. So remember, my first one was that the food coloring will just mix inside of the milk. And it actually looks like that hypothesis was wrong. The dye seems to just be staying right about where I put it, and it doesn't seem to be moving a lot. So it looks like my hypothesis was wrong, but that's okay. It's an important part about being a scientist, and it just shows you that you're thinking about different things that could happen. So now that we put our red in, let's go ahead and put our blue. Remember to open it carefully in case any splashes. You don't want to get it onto your clothes. So I think I'm going to put, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 blue dots. And let's see. It looks like the blue dots are staying in the same spot too. So we tested it twice and my hypothesis wasn't right. Maybe if I did this again, I would have a different hypothesis. Maybe I would think, I think that the food dye is going to stay in the same place until we add our magic ingredient. So remember when we started, I talked about our dish soap. So the dish soap is going to be our magic element that's going to make this experiment work. So if you're not aware, dish soap works by repelling grease on pans. So instead of when you wash your hands, you're using an antibacterial solution, and that's scrubbing the germs away. Dish soap actually works, and it gets underneath the food that may be on your plates, and it lifts it up and allows it to be washed off by water. So what this dish soap's going to do is it's going to repel any of these substances in our milk. So what we're going to do is I'm going to dip this into my dish soap. I'll go ahead and show you. So you see there's a nice amount. You don't need a whole bunch. I'm going to kind of scrape some off on the side. And now it's nice and covered. You can see here. Ooh, there we go. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to dip it in the milk and watch and see if any magic happens. So if my hypothesis is correct, which I think, since this soap is going to repel grease and other substances that may be inside our food dye, that it might move away from the soap. Are we ready to test it? All right, let's see. 3, 2, 1. Oh my goodness, it worked. Can you see that? It looks like all of our food dye went away from the soap quickly, like it was running away. I wonder if we try again if it'll do it. Let's see. 3, 2, 1. It works. It almost reminds me of fireworks that you may see on the 4th of July. This is so cool. I'm going to try again in a few more spots. Wow. That is magic. Try it over here. That is really cool. Now I wonder, I think I have another hypothesis. I wonder if I put my finger in the soap, if my finger would make the food coloring go away, or if only the Q-tip will work. Should we try? I think we should. I'm going to put that off to the side for right now, and I'm going to carefully put my finger inside the dish soap. This is important to make sure you check with maybe mom or dad or any other grown-ups that are home to make sure that you may not be allergic to milk before you put your finger inside. You can also use almond milk if you do have a milk allergy. It'll work just the same, and it'll just be nice and safe for you. So let's see, I have some of the dish soap on my finger. I'm going to carefully put it in and see what happens. I have a magic finger. Looks like I just got a little bit of food dye on there. I'm going to go ahead and just scrape that off on the side so my finger doesn't turn blue, because that would be kind of silly. And look at that, comes off all clean. But we have some really pretty milk left. And I personally really like to make sure I use things as much as I can before I throw them away so that I'm not wasteful. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually make a craft. I don't know about you, I love making crafts, and I think this water is so pretty that we could make a craft out of it. Should we give it a try? So remember when we talked about needing our watercolor paper? I'm going to go ahead and get a piece of that right here. And I'm going to rip it out. Alright, just like that. Perfect. And I actually brought some scissors in case I wanted to cut it into a cool shape, but I think for the first one I'm just going to cut a square. So always making sure you're nice and safe with the scissors, cutting away from your body to make sure you don't cut any of your fingers. So I have just a square of paper. You can kind of see the texture of it. It should, let's see what happens. Remember my second hypothesis that I don't know if the color will come onto the paper because it's not a food, it's a paper. I also think I'm gonna try to push some of, you can see how some of our dye has gone to the side of our dish, and I'm gonna go ahead and put a little bit more of our soap on another Q-tip and see if I can make it go into the middle to test our hypothesis. So we're going to dip that in there, get it nice and soapy. All right, so you can see the green on there, and let's dip it in and see if it'll work. Oh, it's moving a little bit more slowly than it did at the beginning, but you can definitely see it moving. Let's see, do it over here, do it over here. All right, I'm gonna mix it a little bit. Oh, that looks so cool. All right, I really like the way that looks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to carefully take my piece of paper and I'm gonna place it flat down on the milk, and then I'm gonna pull it out and see if it works. All right, on the count of 3, let's see. 1, 2, and 3. Let's put it in there. Oh, I'm gonna tap it just a little bit to make sure it gets some of that color, and I'm ready to test my second hypothesis. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3. I'm going to carefully lift it up. It worked! Okay, so it looks like my hypothesis was wrong, but that's okay, because look how pretty this paper turned out. So what you can actually do with this is you can put it off to the side, maybe put it on one of those paper plates we brought. You can put it here and you can let it dry, and after it dries, it'll turn into paper just like this. So I actually made this example yesterday. I used purple gel food coloring, and I dipped it in there, and then I actually let it sit outside in the sun for a few hours, and it turned nice and hard and flat, just like a regular piece of paper, and that's how I was able to draw these letters on it today. So I let it dry overnight just to make sure all of the milk was all dried out, and then it turns into this really cool, really cool paper. I think this craft would be awesome to maybe make a birthday card or a 4th of July sign, and you can use any color you want. So it's really fun since we were using our red, white, and blue since it is the 4th of July, but you could do it for any different country. You could do it for the Canadian flag, or maybe the Mexico flag, or any other place you may have visited, or you have family that lives there. You can do whatever you want. So remember how we talked about how this dish soap was different than this hand soap, I was wondering if we should try this experiment again and see if this reacts differently than this. I am going to make a hypothesis right now because I haven't tried this yet, so I don't know if it's going to work. I don't know if it's going to look different, act different. I don't know. But I'm going to create a hypothesis, and I want you to do the same. So my hypothesis is that it's not going to work because this antibacterial hand soap doesn't have the same materials that cause oil to go away as this soap. Should we try it? All right, but before we do, I want to touch on my third hypothesis from our original board over here, and that was that I thought that the milk was going to get all bubbly like bubble solution because we put soap inside. But as you see, I can't see any bubbles in here at all. All I see is just regular milk with lots of pretty colors in there. All right, we can also try, let's try one more of our color transfers before we move this milk over to the side, because I think that turned out so pretty. So I cut a bigger sheet this side this time, and we're just going to go ahead and drop it in there. Let it set for just a second. Move the soap out of the way. All right. We're going to bring this over so that we have something to transfer it onto after we're done. And now that it's sat there for just a second, I'm going to go ahead and peel it up. Uh-oh, this one's being a little tricky. Oh, this one worked too. I like how it turned purple since the colors mixed. This is a really fun activity to learn about how different colors react with one another because it shows how it mixes in the milk. This almost reminds me of a galaxy with the purples and the blues, and I even see some pink in there, which just shows how red, white, and blue can mix together to give us all sorts of different colors. So I'm going to carefully go ahead and put this over to the side, and we're going to do this next one on our Christmas plate. So I'm going to go ahead and pop that here, make sure everybody can see it, and then carefully take my milk, and I'm just going to pour it onto our plate. So, see, I want to be nice and careful so that I don't spill it anywhere. Because like I said, I don't want to waste any milk. All right, let's see. That looks good. All right, add a little bit more. Just finish that off. Now that that's done, I'll pop that over to the side. And we have to decide what colors we want to use. We did red, white, and blue, but I also have yellow and I have green. This actually might be orange. I'm not sure. We'll have to test it and see. So we could do, maybe we could do these three colors. We could do yellow, green, and blue. Does that sound like a good plan? You can leave a comment if you know of any country whose flag has blue, green, or yellow on it. All right, so I'm going to do, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, that one hid underneath the milk. You can kind of see it bubbling back up. And let's do green next. We haven't seen green yet. Carefully open that. And I'm going to put some drops in between the green, or in between the blue with the green. 3, 4, 5. All right, and I'm excited to see if this is going to be yellow or orange. Food dye, we're about to find out. So I'll carefully open that. Oh, I think it might be orange, but let's see. We'll do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you can actually make different patterns, different shapes, whatever you may be interested in to test this experiment, which is really fun. You can do it with maybe some of your family members, your siblings, and you can all make different creations and then show each other what you made. All right, so this is our antibacterial hand soap, and I'm going to just carefully squeeze some of it onto the end since I don't have this one in a container. So you're not going to be able to see it since it's kind of clear. So I'll just make sure that's on there nice and good. Roll it in on my finger. And remember, my hypothesis is that this is not going to work as well as the other soap did because this is antibacterial soap instead of dish soap. But let's go ahead and test and see what we think is going to happen. Ready? I'm going to put it right in the middle. Oh! It did work! Oh my goodness, let's try it over here and see if we can get it to work. It looks like I have to be a lot closer for it to work in comparison to what I did when I used the dish soap. So let's turn the Q-tip over. This was our hand soap side. Let's put some dish soap on the other side. Go ahead and dip that in. All right, so you see that nice green end? And let's see if it's going to move more quickly than the hand soap did. I'm going to put it over here. Oh, man. So it looks like the dish soap allows the colors to spread a lot more quickly than the hand soap did. Try it again over here. Wow. I really think these colors are really pretty all mixed together. Let's see. So this is our magic milk experiment, and it's just showing us how different materials react differently to one another. So I'm going to mix those all together, and I think that's going to be a really cool one to use on some paper. So remembering to use my scissors nice and safely, I'm going to cut a square out of that paper. And while it's all pretty and swirled, you can see, look at those colors. I'm going to drop it right on top, just like that. Tap it, tap it, tap it, tap it. Help get those colors on that paper. And then I'm going to carefully peel it up. Oh, wow, that one turned out really fun. I love these colors together. I'm going to put that off to the side with our other ones to dry. And let's see. I wonder if I can keep these colors mixing. If I add more soap, I wonder if I'm going to get a bigger response. So I'm going to try to get as much soap as I can on my Q-tip. Oh my goodness, look at all of that. And I wonder if I just start dropping it in there. It looks like a magic trick. You can see all the colors mixing and moving as you draw with your Q-tip through the milk. Wow, that is so fun. I'm so glad we had the chance to do this experiment together. I'm going to move some of our supplies out of the way, move them off to the side. Like I said, before we wrap up, I want to make sure everyone remembers that we should not be drinking this milk. I don't know about you, but I think that would taste so yucky and it might make your tummy really sick. So after I finish our video, I'm going to make sure I go pour this out in the sink and then wash my hands to make sure all the soap that I have on it doesn't, I don't end up eating that at some point later on, maybe when I'm having a snack. So both the purple milk, and the purple, my goodness, my purple milk and my green milk, I'm going to make sure they both go inside and they get poured out down the drain so that nobody mistakes it for some maybe yummy drink and drinks it and gets sick. So I'm really glad I had the opportunity to come and do this really fun experiment with you. I don't know about you, but an experiment and a craft, what could be better? Those are my two favorite things. I love learning about how to be a scientist and how to make a hypothesis and how it's okay to be wrong. As you can see, I was wrong many times throughout this, but that makes it more fun to me because that means I can think about different ways that I could make changes, and maybe next time I'll have some better hypotheses. And the best part is, now that I learned how to do this experiment, I was able to teach you, and now that you learned this experiment, you can go teach other people about this really cool magic milk and magic paper craft. And like I said, you can turn these into really fun craft ideas. You could maybe write your name on it and put it on your door. You could do all sorts of things, make a card. Maybe you could send a card to one of your family members or a friend that you may be missing since you can't see them right now. You could do all sorts of really fun things. So I'm really glad you all had the opportunity to join me today. Thank you all for coming and spending the afternoon in California here in my backyard. And I'm really glad I have the opportunity to do some really fun science experiments with you. I don't know about you, but I'm definitely looking forward to next week. We're going to have a new, really exciting theme, and I invite you to come back so you can learn more with Get Your Play Online. Thanks so much, friends. Have a great day.